let me, I'm just going to share my screen. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, perfect. So the reason for this lecture, more or less, is because some people were telling us that deployment was a bit different with the React assignment. So that's true. It is different. And then that's actually why what we're going to do is we're just going to go over how to do the deployment using the GitHub pages. So the first thing I'm actually going to do, I'll just write out like a plan for today first. And I'll post these slides as well. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm actually going to show just, we'll use the create React app, like that command, to make a project. And I'm not actually going to do anything. I'm just going to have the default project be deployed. So we're going to do that. And then we're going to, so assuming that, let's say you use that command, you might be thinking, okay, that command makes a Git repository. Yeah, so we do have to deploy the React. I don't know if the React assignment requires deployment, but the API one does. And the React project does, which is still React. So we might as well cover that. So first step, we'll do the, we'll write through that command. And then the second step, the thing is, when you make this command, when you use this command, what this command does, it initializes a Git repository locally inside the project. So there's already a Git repository. And you might notice that because the files will be green, and I'll show that, right? So that's fine. We have a local Git repo, but we don't have a remote when we first use that create React app. So then we'll create a remote, basically a Git repository on our account. And then we are going to connect this remote repository to our local Git repo, okay? So we'll do that. And then we'll talk about deployment, how that works. Okay, so there's a kind of a three-step process for today's plan. Okay. Okay, there we go. So this is today's plan. All right, so let's actually get started with today's plan. So sure, we can just use this. So first, I'm just going to CD into my desktop. Okay. Right now, I believe I was in my installation directory for where I've installed Git Bash. Now I just moved to the users. Let's find, where is my stop? Maybe I need to do CD one more time. Yeah, there we go. CD, just trying to navigate to where my desktop is. Okay, and this is my desktop. Okay. So let's see here. What is the command to create a React app? Okay. I'm also following a set of instructions. Those instructions there, I just shared that in the chat. But I'm just doing essentially what's there, more or less, or a slightly adapted version. So let's just create our app, my app, in the desktop. Now here's the thing. Okay, it's creating app in this folder, my app. So it's going to take a while. Still taking a little bit of time. Okay, perfect. So we're going to cd to my app. So right now this is actually I'm in the project. Now I don't have VS Code open. I could open VS Code, but this is the same. This is like the directory is the same. So actually, I'm going to close this coding in color and open folder, this thing here, right? So I can select this folder, new terminal, git bash, right? So just so everybody sees, this is the same. These two are basically, these are the same. These are both terminals that are open at this path. It's just that this terminal here is integrated into this VS Code development environment, whereas this terminal is a separate terminal that I'm running through the application. But otherwise, these are exactly the same. If I type ls here, this lists out the children inside of my app. So the folders, the files, and if I do that here, it's exactly the same, okay? All right, so let's see here. What do we need to do now? So here's the thing. If I do git push, no push destination. So the issue here is that when I created this, I have a local Git repo, but I don't have anything to push to. So let's draw that out. So what's happening here is that I have my local, this is local, my app, right? This is where all my files are and everything. And I say push, but when I push it, it's like, where do you actually want me to push on GitHub server? Which remote repository? So what we're going to do very shortly, we're going to create, I'll give it the same name just so it's not confusing. And actually, this is a good practice. I will create on GitHub a remote repository with the same name, and I will push to this one. So basically what I'll be doing when I create this, I'll go back to my terminal and I'll connect these two. So these are now connected, okay? So let's do that. So let's go here, github.com, create a new repository. And let's see, my project name is just my app. Yeah, my app. So I'm just going to call it my app. I'll just say testing deployment. And sure, let's make it public. No README. And let's create the repository because I already have a README locally. Okay. And here it even says, once you make this, because it's empty, it's like, okay, create a new repository on the command line. So these are, there are multiple ways to do this. If you already have a README inside of this, remember it gives that drop-down option to, and I'll show you, like let's say here, let me click another repository of mine, this one, right? The fact that I already have things here, it gives me this drop-down option to, SSH to copy this, and then I can clone it locally. So that's automatically done. Like we can automatically do that if we already have things in the repository. So is that so far, is everything sort of, does anyone have any questions about anything I've done so far, which was just sort of create the React app. I talked a little bit about sort of local versus remote. So no questions. Okay, so okay, sounds good. All right, so one thing that I would mention is that, yeah, if there's stuff here, you can just clone and that creates a copy with these same files. But the thing is, if I don't initialize a README on my GitHub repo, when I make it, I get this sort of thing. Now, what this is, it's saying I can create a new repository on the command line. So locally somewhere on my computer, wherever I want in the path, I can initialize a repository, right? So this command, what this is saying is that it's saying I believe it's saying create a directory, create a folder, my app, and then inside of it, create a readme.markdown file, create a readme file inside of that directory, right? So then we basically go inside of that. Once we're inside of, our path is inside of that my app. So kind of like, it would be like this, we're inside of my app, right? Then we can do git init. We create the repository. So that's what that command means. Initialize, create the local repository. We add readme to it. We add the readme file. We make a commit. We set the master branch as main. And then see this command, git remote add origin. Okay, so what this means is that it's almost like we're setting the address of our remote. So like here, we're basically saying, it's like in this part here, we're telling it to point here to the remote. That's what that URL does, okay? And so that's what this part is. Remote, it's kind of like remote add origin. Origin is the server, GitHub server, and that's the address. And then git push, basically push the, push it to remote, right? But we don't need to do this because we already have the repository made, right? See here, we have this repository. If I say git branch, I already am on the master branch, right? So I don't need to do that. So what I need to do here, I need to do this. Git remote, and I think I can copy this. I'll copy this here, and I'll type this in. Git remote add origin, and then that. And what that's going to do, git remote add origin, paste. Uh-oh. Okay. Not fun. I think what happens if I put Control V, I think if I press Control V and then try to paste, I think something breaks. You can't actually do Control V on the Git bash. So what this is doing is it's setting the remote. It's basically like, okay, please point to that. I hit enter. Okay, so now those are connected. Now I believe this command, let me just double check. What does this command do? I do believe that command is just saying, okay, rename the current branch to main. That's what it's doing. So right now the name is master. I think we should change it to main because I do believe the branch on remote is main. The name is main. Let me actually check that. Oh, it doesn't say here, but well, this is the default instruction, so it's probably the default name is main. So let's do that. So let me just do that. Git branch and main. Okay, so now I can notice that I renamed that. And again, everything here, I have everything. So I'm going to do git add. Everything is added. Now, when I added everything, this stuff was green. Now it's not green anymore, okay? And notice that this node modules is gray. That's because in my git ignore, I'm telling it to, this is default when you create the React app. You have this git ignore and these things are already set up. And basically what this means is ignore that. Yeah, to change the name to main, all I did was I just typed in git branch m main. Now the thing is, the reason why I changed the name was just because these are the instructions given. Now I'm assuming they told me to change it to main because the remote default name for the branch is main, not master. And if the names are different, then that's an issue. When I push it, it'll push to a different named branch. It won't push to main. It's probably not that big of an issue because I could just merge, do a pull request. Okay, so let's push. I don't think I need to do this. I think I can just do push. Oh, no, I do. Okay. Right. The current branch main has no upstream branch. Okay, so This is interesting. So remember when I said what this does? So this command, remote add origin, and that URL, what that is doing, that is telling us, it's telling us to point to the repo itself, but it's not, doesn't tell us which branch to push to. Okay, so when I do a git push from my local main, it says the current branch main, the local branch main, has no upstream branch. It does have an upstream repository, because before it said there was no upstream address to push to. It does have the address, it just doesn't know the branch, right? So I just need to push the current branch and set the remote as upstream. So I do believe that is what this command does. This is a shorthand, and they even give it here for that. So that pushes it. Main set to track origin main. And if I refresh this up here, now I see everything here. Okay. And okay. I don't think I even made a commit. I just said git add, right? I don't think I did a commit. Yeah. So I think the create React app is kind of smart. So when I did git add, if I just pushed it, I think it already had the commit, just the initialized project using create React app. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. Yep, Samina.
I think it's the same as a non-React app project. Aren't these the same steps? I don't find it any different, because this one, the upstream one also, this error comes, I mean, this issue comes when it's the first time that we are doing it. Once we do it, then next time, whenever we want to push, we just do git push and it pushes. We don't have to write all of that.
So yes, the deployment is different. I have not started deployment yet. I'm just going over potential scenarios that people might encounter if they try to create an empty repository, or if they use create React app and there's nothing connected to that from the remote, what to do and what that means when they encounter those errors.
Okay.
So this is before deployment.
Okay.
When project team members push, still we have to create our own branch, push and merge. Yes, often. Okay, so that is more something like, okay, if you have multiple people working, so let's say at this point in time, this is t equals 0. At this point in time, everybody's on the main branch, right? At t equals 2, let's say at this point in time, your team decides, okay, let's start like working on separate branches, right? So then you guys sort of meet, you delineate tasks. So, this person has to work on this feature, this person works on this. So let's say there's like 3 people in this project. So at this point in time, now you guys are all separate branches, okay? Now let's say here, we'll go over this, what's going on here. So let's say these 2 people, at some point in time, the yellow and the red person, let's say at t equals 4, these guys decide, okay, we're pretty much done, right? So they decide to merge their changes together. Boom, boom. And they merge back to the main branch, okay? So here's the thing. When we're back here, let's say the feature that the green person's working on is taking a lot of time. It's a big feature, right? So if they go to their branch on the remote, it will probably say 10 commits ahead of main and like 50 commits behind, okay? Let's say, so it'll say 10 ahead. Let's say it says 10 ahead, 50 behind. What that means, these 10 ahead correspond to these changes that they have made here, right? And the 50 behind correspond to all these things missing here that they don't have. Exactly, right. So they can merge to main, but the thing is, because they're behind, they will actually need to pull from main. So they will need to do a pull request to their local branch from main. And what that will do, so now this is main, and this is still their branch. So they pull from main to their branch locally, right? So what that means is when I say local and remote, remote is the remote repository on GitHub website. Local is on your computer, right? So you'll do like git pull origin, something like that. You'll type in your repository, origin main. That pulls, that basically does what this is doing here, this bit here. What happens when they do that is that there are probably going to be merge conflicts. So locally, they will have to resolve these merge conflicts and then make a commit. And that commit is the merge commit for the pull request, okay? For pulling stuff from the remote main to their local individual branch. So that's what they need to get those changes before they can actually like push to main. Now, actually don't push to main, but again, they'll have to do that, okay? And then when they resolve those merge conflicts, then these are like kind of like one-to-one at this point. They have everything. So the thing is, if everybody works on their own branches, this usually will be avoided. However, here are some cases. So the thing is, you might not need, so this might not, I'm just going to put a question mark here. Doing this might not be necessary. It really depends. You can push your changes to the remote, right? Your remote, so your local green branch, you can get green local, you can push it to the remote green. Green local, let's say green remote. You can push these changes up, and then you can merge. You can just do an online merge request, right? Like where would that be? Here you can create new pull requests, and you can merge it that way. But let's say that there are some parts of this green branch that actually require features in the yellow and red branches to be completed. Okay, so that is actually why in this scenario, I'm showing this person pulling in changes from the main branch. Once both their friends are done with their features, they're pulling those changes in so that they can actually finish their feature. So this is a scenario where people have created their own branches, and one person actually needs changes from the other two branches when they're done to finish their feature, and the logic behind what to do in that sort of scenario. Now, I would highly recommend, there is YouTube, Ninja, GitHub. This YouTube series, okay? Please watch this YouTube series, not this ad. I just want to skip this so I can show, like, website. This is, these are really short videos overall, but they will go over the concepts. So I'm just going to put this in the chat. What I'll also do is I will put up, when this lecture is over, I'll make a little sort of posting with some of these resources. So Git and GitHub, and the instructions that I was following for deployment. Okay, but this is really important because this covers, I would say, and when you actually follow these videos, like do everything that they're doing. They're using Atom, which is a different development environment, but you can do it in VS Code. There's no issue with that. But like follow along with the code, what they're doing. Create a new repository, like how they create their repository, okay? It'll be really helpful. Okay, so we have that. That's done. Where were we now? Right, so now we are, okay, so now we have pushed everything because we see it here. Go to my app. Okay, so we have everything here. That's good. Now let's get to deployment. Okay, so for deployment, the instructions are telling us to, I'll just do these here. So it's telling us to install, and I'm just following the same instructions that I have sent in the chat. It's telling us to install GitHub Pages package. and designate it as a development dependency. Okay. So we'll just install, which is, that's for installing that. Now it's different. A development dependency is slightly different from an actual package. And you can see the difference here. Dev dependency. So this is where GitHub Pages is. It's not actually up here. Okay. Now, the difference between these is that these are only required during the development process. They're not actually needed to run during the actual running or execution of our application itself. So notice how like these are necessary for us to actually like for the React app, for us to see the React app, you know, on that web page, for us to click those things and do all that, these are necessary, right? Even Axios would be necessary, right? Because we were using Axios to send requests to our mock API. We actually need that like while we're running it. This is only needed in the development phase or testing, something like that. The reason why we separate these is because it is actually, we're going to get into something called build, but essentially we minimize the amount of space that our application will occupy when we deploy it, and that speeds up it just speeds up like how fast I guess how fast it is, right? The size of it, and when it's deployed, it's also faster for people to use that application, right? So that's why we generally want to minimize how many packages we use, and if there's some package that's only necessary during development, we actually put it here in these dev dependencies. And we can see here the difference. If I just did that, it would not install it as a development dependency, okay? So let's clear that. Okay. Now it's saying open this package.json. So I have that open. And then it's telling me to add a homepage property in the format. So in this format, in that format, add a homepage property. Yeah, so I used this command to install the package, okay? But I'm also, like this video will be posted very quick soon. And I'm also posting the instructions. I've also posted the instructions above. I made a post with the, like where I'm following these instructions from. So here, add a homepage property. Okay, so here, let's see here. So here, I'm going to add below version. That's where they put that. I'm going to say homepage. And git, okay, my git name .github.io / okay, and then my repo name was just my app. Let's save that. And then now I need to write deployment scripts. Okay, perfect. So now what I'm doing is telling me to, so you know how when we run npm run start, when we type that in, we hit enter, that actually runs our app. So we're going to add more of these scripts or these commands, these that we can run that will actually do the deployment. So pre-deploy, okay, pre-deploy npm run build. Okay, we're gonna, once I actually run this, we are going to go over this and I will explain what even is this build. Now notice this here. You see this command, React scripts build, right? And then it's just build. So if I did npm run build, I would really be running this. So that's what this is doing. Now, npm pre-deploy will run this build, which will create a build. We'll go over what that is. I won't explain it now. I'll explain it once I run it, and we can then see what it is once I run it. Okay. And then I'm also going to type in copy this, which is a deployment command. And this is the gh pages dbuild. Okay. That's going to be using that development dependency that I just installed right there. Okay, and then it says add a remote to the local Git. Okay, so I already did that. Let's just david package.json. Let's just commit that. Push that to main. Okay. Now let's actually run this. Let's type npm run deploy. Now when I run deploy, I'm going to basically GitHub pages /d build. I think this will run this command. But I do think, you know, this is part of, it's not telling me to run the pre-deploy. So I'm assuming that in this command, it already knows to run this, very likely. Let's just run that. It's probably going to do a build first. Do you guys notice this thing? It's running that. And then you see this right here, build. We're going to talk about what that is. Okay, so it's been published. I'll continue with these, but first I actually want to look at this build, okay? Check this out. So the thing is, when we deploy a React application, we make something called a build. So we want to minimize the amount of the size of all our code. We like kind of crush it down into a format, into a build, and then deploy that. So typically the build is just the front end that is being compressed and squished in a way. And that is the part that is, so usually, okay, so this will be, I'll draw it out. So usually when we deploy something, now GitHub Pages sort of simplified it a lot with other types of applications. With React, it gets a bit more complicated, but what's essentially happening is all our React code, right? The SRC, the components, you know, all the stuff here, it's kind of like being compressed into something called a build. And the build is what gets deployed, okay? Now, here's the thing. If we have a backend, that is, so let's say if we have our own backend, our own server, we have our own endpoints, right? Now, what that would mean is, let's say we're not using mock API. Let's say, now, this will come up in the future, so it's okay if you don't fully get it, that's fine. But I'm just going to explain a hypothetical scenario where we have a backend too. Okay, so we have a backend, all that code, that's fine. But what happens is that in this case, we just have a front end, so we're not worrying about this. But if we had a backend, this build, this tiny little build that we make, we actually move that into our backend, and then this is what gets deployed. So in both scenarios, what build does is it just sort of squishes our front end to take as little space as possible for our deployment. And let's see what that looks like now. Now you will see this will look very strange. This stuff is the same more or less. Okay, check this out. So this is kind of funny. This is our index.html just outside the build. Okay, notice that it kind of looks, it looks good, like, right? Like it has everything we need. Our build version of this looks like this. So all the comments have been removed. The amount of space it's taking has been sort of squished down. So now it's, the whole thing is just on one line. It automatically does that. Okay, let's compare our actual JavaScript. So let's see here, app.js. Well, I don't even know which one is which because I have all these weird files, but let's just, you know, let's compare. So this is app.js. This is the this is probably app.js here. Okay, so this is what the build looks like. It is basically, yeah, I don't, like, you know, I can't really, I don't know what this is. I'm sure you could probably Control F and find certain things. So let's see here. save to reload. Let's try to find where is that text here that says save to reload. Okay, so it's right here. So it's doing the same thing, but it's just been squished in such a way so as to take as little space as possible. Now I know it looks like it's taking more space here, but the size of the, like in terms of the simplicity, it's more simple. It's easier for the, I guess it's easier for, it is easier for, for lack of a better term, it's easier for the computer to read and execute that, you know, as compared to this. We have kind of squished, you know, because each of these, you know, what this actually is and what this is doing is a lot more complicated than just this element. So we essentially turn it into something like this, okay? This looks to me like just pure JavaScript. I think that's why it looks so weird. Secret internals do not use or you will be fired. That's interesting. Yeah, I think this is all pure JavaScript, and they've just compressed it in a way so that it is as, well, not simple for us, but yeah. So, you know, you can peruse through this. Interesting. I'll try to find something on a little, you know, article on what build is, so we can talk about that. Just interesting, you know, this is kind of how it's done. Okay, but so regardless, we have our build now, and the build is what is deployed. So let's see here. The next thing is telling me to navigate to GitHub pages. Go to GitHub repositories. All right, so it says GitHub pages settings page. I think that's just in this. I can just click settings. Pages. Is it in apps? Oh, here we go. Pages. Oh, and it even says I'm already live. So code and automation section, build and deployment source. Okay, so I just need to see deploy from a branch. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, what is this? What is this GitHub pages branch? Kind of weird. Interesting. So it actually created a separate branch. Okay. This is the build. This is the build deployed. So I think what they did is when I did the deployment, let me see the command here. What command did I run? When I did this deploy, creates an optimized production build. Interesting. It doesn't say there, but I think what it did, because notice that I have a new branch. I think it made the build and then it only pushed the build up to a separate branch. And then this pages is deploying from that build. It's not deploying from main, it's deploying from my build branch. And I will show why that's important. What we're going to do is so let's actually just see if this works. Okay, now notice that this is not spinning. I think that's an issue on my end because that has not been spinning even on like when I run the thing without build. Okay, and I will show I'll show that to you guys here. I'm gonna do npm run start. So I'm gonna run it locally. This is like outside of the website, the live link, right? And it should not be spinning. Yeah, notice that for me, this is not spinning. I don't know why it's not spinning. I think that's just some issue I'll have to fix. But the point is, it's not that the build is broken, that this is not spinning. It should be spinning. It's just not spinning on either, right? Okay, so one thing I'm going to do here So does anyone have any questions on anything that I've just talked about, like with build, the fact that it's deploying a build branch? What that means, I'll go over again. We'll make a change to our actual branch, like our main, and I'll show that pushing that change does not actually update the build. If nobody has any questions, feel free to type in no as well, and I can continue. For sure, yeah, I can help anyone who has questions on deploying this. I can help out with that. Absolutely. Okay, perfect. But it is important in the long run, though, that if you have questions, do like rewatch the lecture or ask questions. Like you should be able to do it on your own as well. But I can help with sort of running it, but it is in the long run you want to be able to do it on your own. Okay, so this is the website, the live link. This is deploying from a branch called GitHub Pages, which is, and notice here, this is the main branch. Notice that this has like public SRC, and then this is just the build. This is the same build. Maybe I can, okay. Notice that this build is this, right? It's the same thing, okay? Here's the thing. Here's the interesting bit. What would happen if I go into this app.js and I say this? What would happen if I do that? Okay, so if I type that in, if I save it, which one is going to change? My live link or the React app that I have running on my localhost website, or the one running locally on my machine? Right, only the local one will change. And let's see. That is still like that. This has been changed. Okay, that's good. So the reason why that is because this, so firstly, this is being deployed. So I haven't even, so even if this was being deployed from my main, it still wouldn't change anything. And that's because I have not committed this change and I haven't pushed it up. So I would have to commit and push the change up to my main branch. And then I would have to wait for it to redeploy from my main branch for that change to be reflected. But the way this is that this is deploying from a build. So what I would need to do is, once I have these changes saved, I would actually need to rerun that build command to like remake the build with that change in it. Because notice if I search this up in my build here, hello everyone, I don't see it anywhere. That change has not been built yet, right? So what I should do, okay, so I don't even need to push this. I just save that and then I rerun this command, npm run deploy, and it's going to remake the build. And it shouldn't make a new folder. It should just update what's inside of this. Create an optimized production build. Okay. Now, if I go here, it's going to say published. Okay. Now here, okay, so this says 12 minutes ago, but if I refresh that, it's going to say now, because I just made a recent update. I just pushed that. And then when I go here, it says 13 minutes ago. So if I refresh that, this might take some time to update, to deploy. The branch has been updated. My GH pages branch, which has the latest build, that's updated. The latest build now, right? Like if I go here, I'm going to go here. I'm going to search up hello everyone. Oh, great, right? Awesome. I have that there now. Okay. So that's good. This has been updated. My remote GH pages is updated. It's just that it hasn't redeployed yet. Let me keep refreshing. Okay, perfect. So now it says site is live. So if I go here and reload, now it says hello everyone. And just to end things off, I'm going to just commit and push to main hello everyone change. Hear that and just push. So now I'm pushing it to my main branch, that change. Okay. So that is a recap on, we covered a few things. We covered the Create React app. We covered how to initialize a Git repo, like how to create a Git repo on the remote, and how to connect the repository that is automatically given to us through Create React app, how to connect that to the remote address to save, and that saves us time. So we covered that. And we also talked about builds, what those mean, deployment, how deployment on the React app works, and what it means for it to deploy, for it to take that build, for it to only deploy that build, and what the consequences of that are as reflected in our project, right? The fact that every time we make a change, we actually need to rebuild, like redeploy. So I think there's a concept we're going to cover in the future called continuous integration. And what that means is like, it's this idea of automating this process of when we make changes to automatically redeploy. So we don't need to actually manually keep doing that. So these are all sort of connected. Does anyone have any questions in general, though, about anything we have covered? Okay, awesome. So let's take I guess we're going to start an early lab. So let's take a 10-minute break, and then we'll be back at 2:02, and we'll start our lab officially then. So I'll just be taking questions. Anybody who wants any help with setting this up, I can help with that as well. For sure, yeah. So everything has been recorded, and this will be posted hopefully by the end of today at the latest. So even though for the React assignment, you're not required to do a live link, I would actually recommend doing it regardless. And you can even resubmit, that's fine. Resubmit with the live link there. I would recommend doing it as practice, just because it's also easier for us to test your application if there is a live link deployment. Now, of course, before you run the build, make sure everything's up to date. It's like the latest version. So the build has your code essentially. Yeah. And yeah, this sort of format, username,